Hello friends, welcome to my channel. This is Brian once again bringing to you another tutorial in photography. If you're new to my channel, please do consider subscribing. I'm leaving my photography fan page on Facebook and the Instagram link in the description below. Also, you could check out our first ever photography tutorial on this channel with the link provided on the top. As promised, I could not bring to you the tutorial where I would discuss about DSLR features. I'm really sorry about that because I was having some kind of technical issues, but I do promise I will definitely bring that tutorial up. So today we're going to talk about something that's very important in photography: lenses. The most important part. Of course, you do need a camera body to take the picture, but the most important part is your lenses. Right here you can see there are three different kind of lenses. This right here, this is what we call a prime lens. This is a very basic kit lens, something that came with the camera body when I purchased my first ever DSLR. And right here, this is a telephoto zoom lens. These two are zoom lenses. Okay, and considering the telephoto range, I will talk to you about that one as well. Let's discuss about the various parts and features of a lens. The first thing you'll notice, this right here, this is the lens cap, the front cap. This right here is the rear cap, where the rear element is. I will take that off later on. This is what you call a lens hood. This one blocks light from the sides. So, like the wider your lens, there's a very good probability that light from the side might interfere, giving you lens flares, which we will talk about later on. And this particular piece protects the light from getting into the lens and create a flare, an unwanted flare. As you can see, I have this lens fitted with a very basic filter. It's just plain glass. Although they say it's an UV filter, it filters out the ultraviolet lights when you're shooting in daylight. But personally, I will not prefer an UV filter over just a regular filter. Just make sure you buy some good quality glass. Just don't buy something that's cheap, because as you know, a lens, it's already there are several pieces of glass. Sometimes they have 9 pieces, 10 pieces, 12 pieces, 7 pieces of glass inside. So there's a lot going on inside. You don't want to add a separate piece of glass to bend out your light and then distort your photograph, right? Okay. On this lens, as you can see, it's written VR. This is a proprietary technology for Nikon only. Other technologies exist in the market as well, and you can always find out the details on their manuals. This one stands for vibration reduction. So what does it do? This one protects your images from getting blurred when you're taking a shot. Say you're taking a picture of a bird, and as you hold the camera, even the slightest shake could distort your image. It can bring a blur in the image. You don't want that. You want a tack sharp image. That's what we're looking for here, right? So the VR technology reduces the vibration. There's an element inside that physically moves. It's an optical stabilization. It's not a digital thing. So there's a glass, a physical glass inside, which moves. And that one moves in relative motion to your camera's motion. So any kind of blur, any kind of motion is compensated for by this technology right here, and you get a tack sharp image. This is the 18 to 105 millimeter lens, and there are several numbers over here that states the aperture size. This one aperture is 3.5 to 5.6. It's a G-type lens, and as you can see, there's a small notation here that says DX. This one stands for the Nikon body, which is a crop sensor body. Now remember, there are two different kinds of bodies that exist in the market. One is full frame, which is referred to as FX, and there's the crop sensor body, which is a DX. We will be discussing about those technologies later on. There are several buttons over here. One stands for automatic focus and the other one is manual focus. And the switch at the bottom, it switches on or off your VR tech. So this the ring on in the front. Sometimes the zoom ring is in the back, but over here on this lens, it's in the front. So as you twist it, you can see there's a little pointer right here. It points to 105 millimeter. So you're actually zooming in to a frame. The bigger the number, the more zoomed in you are. The smaller the number, for now it's 18 millimeters, the wider a shot you will get. Maybe if you want a very wide shot of a landscape. So this is what you're looking for. Of course, you can use your creativity for the other focal lengths. And by the way, I'm very sorry I forgot to mention, these are your focal lengths, okay? The bigger the number, the more zoomed in it is. You get a tighter frame. And the smaller the number here, the wider the shot you get. So you get more of the scenery into your photograph, onto your sensor. The ring here at the back, this is your focus ring. So if you want to focus on this lens, it does not have an override. So if you put it on auto, this particular ring is not going to do you any good. So any kind of focusing mechanism which is activated on the body of the camera, that's going to kick in. And that's what's going to focus on your subject. If you want to focus manually, so let's say you focused on something, you have a focal length of 50 millimeter, and you want to focus manually. So you just switch it to manual, and then once when you rotate left or right, depending on the manufacturer, sometimes it varies, so you can get your thing in focus, your subject in focus. Your filter thread size, this is a 67 millimeter. You will always find the filter size mentioned right here. Okay, this one's a 67, so if you have to buy, you want to know the correct size of the filter that you need to use, you'll have to look out at the bottom of the lens. It clearly states 67. So any filter which is of size 67 is going to fit onto this lens right here on top. I'm sorry, this lens is very old, so you know the thread is not in really good shape. Now let's talk about the aperture, the f value. The f value on a lens determines the aperture size. What is the aperture itself? The aperture is a tiny hole, it's a ring, which expands or contracts, allowing a certain amount of light to go from the front element of the lens and through the back or the rear element of the lens and onto the sensor of the camera body, the DSLR. The wider your aperture, the shallower your depth of field. We will be discussing more about those in later episodes, but for now, just understand this much. The smaller the value, the wider is your aperture size. I'll show it to you just in a second when I show you the other lens. And the bigger the value, say 3.5, that's a bigger aperture as compared to 5.6. How does it relate? Aperture values are in inverse, which is 1 over 3.5. Of course, 1 over 3.5 is a bigger value than 1 over 5.6. If we open the rear part of the lens, you can see over here there are several contacts. This is an electronic lens, of course, so there are a lot of things going on in there. So the camera body controls a lot of things, a lot of features on this lens. The camera body can utilize all the features, for instance, the VR technology or your autofocus mechanism. I mean, there's a motor inside this lens, so your camera body will control your lens's features via these contact points. So these are the basic features of your kit lens. This is a very basic kit lens. It's a very good one for starters. It's a 18-105. Now let's talk about prime lenses. What's a prime lens? In very simple terms, this is a prime lens because the focal length is fixed at 50 millimeters. And as you will notice, the f value on this lens is 1.8. which is a very big of an aperture. It's quite big of an aperture. Why? Because, like I said before, this is in inverse proportion. So f value is considered or calculated as 1 over the aperture ring size, diameter size. So 1.8, 1 over 1.8 is obviously a bigger number compared to 1 over 4 or 1 over 8. Okay, and like I said, the smaller this value, the smaller value you have on a lens, the shallower will be your depth of field. So you can isolate your subject from the background to get that beautiful bokeh, also known as, some people, they just love to say bokeh, and some people just call it the blur, but all over, the main fact remains, it's called a bokeh. And the shallower, the bigger this value, 1.8, the smaller the value, the wider your aperture, and the shallower is the depth of field. Now, I was talking about, and oh yeah, like I said, the very basic thing to learn about prime lenses, you don't have to go into too much details. I don't want to, flood you with all this information. But the thing is, anytime someone mentions about a prime lens, just be sure, rest assured that they're referring to a lens which has a fixed focal length. Could be 50 millimeter, 80 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 28 millimeters. It's a fixed focal length, unlike this lens right here, which has a variable focal length, 18 to 105. Okay, this is not what you call a prime lens. This is just a consumer zoom lens. This right here is a prime lens because it's got a fixed focal length. That's all you need to know. You don't have to go into much details. Let's look into this one. I was talking to you about the aperture size, right? You can see the aperture ring right there. Okay, now I'm gonna twist this thing and you can see the aperture ring opening and closing. So right now, as you can see, this lens, I've set this aperture to a very small value, which is at 22. Can you see, like, you can barely see it. You barely see the tiny hole right there. So that's a very small aperture, and the value over here on the lens is 22. So like I said, 1 over 22, that's a very small number, right? So as I open up the aperture, right now I'm on 8. See how small, still how small it is? And right now I'm on f1 over 8, 1.8. So can you see? It's all wide open. So this is how an aperture operates. So the bigger your aperture, the wider your aperture, more light can go into the camera body. So in dark situations, you want to open up your aperture as much as possible to let more light inside. Say maybe it's too sunny outside, and as you close it, you get less light going to the sensor, and you can get a very clean picture, something that's not overexposed, or you can get a tack sharp, like foreground to background. Of course, I will be discussing all this information in the later episodes, but this is the very basic thing. Okay, this is absolutely basic. And I'm gonna close up again. This lens is a very common lens. Every photographer should have this in their bag. This is called the Nifty 50, or the 50 millimeter. There are very many manufacturers who produce this. There's Sigma. This is the Nikon, the first party one that I have. You can buy any one you want, okay? And this lens is a must-have for any photographer. Comes in not too expensive. It's pretty much cheap. You can pick up an used one if you want to practice for the time being. And as you can see, this lens does not have any electronics inside. Okay, so, but you might be confused, like, oh well, there are several contacts here. Well, because your camera body measures what you call the distances. Okay, so this lens has the ability to provide distance information to the camera's body. Alright, so that's the reason why they have this contacts over here. Other than that, there's no vibration reduction or the VR feature on this lens. Nothing. It's a very basic thing. The reason being, you can open up the aperture very wide, alright, and having that very much wide open, and you can use a higher shutter speed. Next up, and the final one I have right here, is a zoom lens, a telephoto zoom lens. So this is another important lens that any photographer should have in their bag. This lens has a very important feature, which is a VR2. If you will notice, this one has only one switch right here. It's got only one switch right there at the bottom. So just it's VR1, on or off. On this lens, there are two modes of VR, and this is a VR2. That means it's got two axes of vibration reduction, and that's very crucial when you're using a zoom lens, a big one. For instance, this one, the 70 to 300 millimeter, it goes crazy zoomed in on your subject. If you take a photo of the moon, you're standing outside at night on a clear sky night, and you want to take a photo of the moon, just pump it up all the way to 300 millimeter. You will get a very clean shot, handheld. You don't even need a tripod for this. It's for beginners. If you want to try out to take a photograph of the moon, this lens is a very good one. And I will provide you a sample of a recent moon photo that I took. You can actually see the craters crisp and clean. And this lens, as opposed to this one, let me just show you side by side. So you see, this lens only has an automatic feature and a manual feature. But over here, there's a manual to automatic override, and there's a complete manual. So what does that mean? If you keep it on manual and auto, the override point, and if I put this one on automatic, no matter what I do, how much I twist this focus ring, this lens will not change its focus. It's going to rely on the camera body. Whatever the body will allow the lens to focus on, whatever you focus on, half press the shutter button, it's going to focus on that. This focus ring is not going to bring any effect on the focus. Whereas on this one, if you did focus on something, but you think maybe you quickly need to change it, so you just twist this ring, and once when you twist it, there's an override. So even though your camera body is focusing on something, this ring will help you to override that particular focus. Okay, so the camera body misfocused on something. It focused on something else, but you want it on something else too. And you can quickly adjust that focus. Like maybe a small turn would do the trick. So this kind of lens is gonna help you with that. And over here, as you can see, this is the very basic VR on and off. And over here, you put it to normal, this is gonna have the very same kind of VR feature as this particular lens. That's gonna be VR1. Once you switch it to VR2, right there on the side, put it to active, there's gonna be two elements inside this lens that's gonna compensate for any kind of shake or vibration using this lens. Now, why is that very important on zooms, bigger zooms or bigger telephotos? Because on a telephoto lens, once when you zoom in, your subject is like very near to you, right? So you see more details, even though you'll be in bright sunlight. And if you take the shot, trust me on this, if you don't have the stabilization or the VR technology, your photo is gonna turn out blurred no matter what, guaranteed. You cannot take handheld shots. Even if you're on a tripod, even the slightest movement is gonna create chaos on your photos. You don't want that. You want tack, sharp, clean pictures, right? That's why you will definitely need this feature, because the more you zoom in, you have more details on your sensor, and with more details, even the slightest vibration is gonna magnify. The bigger this number, the more magnified the subject on your sensor, and that means any small shake is gonna be multiplied by huge factors. Okay, and this is gonna be really a big trouble when you take a photo of something nice, you come back home and only to realize, oh, did I just ruin it? No, You don't have to ruin it basically. If you have this technology turned on, the VR or any kind of optical stabilization on the lens turned on, and put it to the highest setting, this is going to get you that very tack sharp image. So yeah guys, that's about it. This concludes our lengthy tutorial. I'm sorry for keeping you guys waiting for so long. If you find this lesson helpful, please do not forget to give that thumbs up. And if you have any feedback, like you want something particular you're looking for, you can always comment on there. I will help you over there. I'll try my best. Thank you guys for staying with me. Peace out.